And let's get started, ladies.
Okay. Welcome to our session number 2 of the Parents Voice series. My name is Erika Brooks, and I am a field organizer with Central Valley Movement Building Organizing Institute. And I'm going to ask Vanessa if you can put like the slide, like the full screen. I'm not able. I don't know if everyone is seeing like a red. Um, yes. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that. Um, Welcome. This is our session number 2, and here we're gonna for this session we're gonna be talking about community power and how do we build that power. Here tonight is again my colleague Mary Aguirre that we will be co-facilitating this session with Mary today. I think.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Mary Aguirre. I am the Native Field Organizer for Central Valley Movement Building Organizing Institute. I cover the Central Valley, and I'm really excited to see everybody that was able to join us tonight. So what we're going to talk about is how we go from me to we tonight. And we're going to start with why we're here. Starting with one of the reasons why we're here, and I'm sure everybody has come together and had some of the same interests, is that we all want the best for our child, right? No matter, what our background is, our culture, or even our circumstances. So the desire to come together and unite with other parents or caregivers that are going through the same thing. And this is what normally connects us together. And if we look at and remember that shared goal as we go through this, it becomes easier to see each other as allies and not strangers. And we start to build relationships with each other. Then, we start to realize we're not alone, because sometimes in the system, it can be, very isolating. We could feel like we're alone. Trying to navigate school policies, the services, all of these things can feel very confusing and, are very exhausting at times. Um, Many of us tend to feel isolated, like we are the only ones that are going through this fight. And so connecting with other parents kind of lets us know that we're not in it alone. And these can be like very heavy burdens to carry alone. So it's nice to know that we have other parents that we can relate to. Goes on to our next point is together we are stronger and more effective. So when we come together, things shift, right? We share knowledge, we can share encouragement with each other, and suddenly everything just doesn't seem so impossible. We're connecting with those other parents, even other families and caregivers, and being able to understand each other and really just realize we are not alone. So that's an amazing thing. So we know that together we are able to make a real change. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's look at what me to we means. And we'll look at the very first point is building bridges across differences. So when we come together, our differences shouldn't divide us. They should strengthen us, and look at the perspective like as a piece of a bridge that connects us all together. We all have a little piece that, can finish that puzzle to somebody else's journey. So all of these help connect us and help us, cross challenges together, things that we may feel like we can't do alone. Um, so by honoring, our different voices, we can create that community where other parents feel like they belong. And like I mentioned before, like it can feel very isolating alone. Next one is recognizing that your story matters. So your story is powerful. At times we may not feel like it. The struggles, even your victories, all the lessons that you've learned, you've lived, not just personal, but they're not just personal, they are gifts. you know some of these stories, they caused traumas, the isolation, so they can guide and inspire others, because you might be in a place that somebody was last year. And so being able to walk beside them and help guide other parents, it really does help each other, guide and inspire those. So remember, when you're sharing your story, you are an inspiration. Um, so these help shape our communities. So moving from individual struggles to collective solutions. Together, we turn challenges into change and struggles into solution. So sometimes what feels heavy for one becomes lighter when we're carrying, with many people. Again, joining those experiences, we can transform, and I love this, we can transform our isolation into solidarity. To me, so being, having that solidarity is huge. I love that word. It just shows that we can come together, like I said, despite our differences. We may think very differently, but there's a lot of things that relate on, especially when it comes to our children. So again, we just don't talk about our problems. We want to build solutions. We want to advocate for change and create a future where our children, our families are supported. Next slide. All right. So the power of parents. This is huge. So parents are the first and the most important advocates. We know from the very beginning, we are the voices that speak up for our children, especially when they can't. I remember when my children were like 2 and 3, and I would go visit friends, or we'd be at the store and they'd start talking, and they were just, everybody would hear it as babbling, but I knew exactly what they were saying. So I'd have to always translate, this is what they said. Just being able at that time, being an advocate for my child. So we notice, all the small details about our children. All we know how to ask the hard questions, and and we know what to push when our children need something. So within us, advocacy starts at home, and so it can grow stronger. And then with parents, and we carry that courage. We carry this into our communities. So, like we know our children the best. Nobody's ever going to understand them like we do. Nobody's ever going to understand them like we do. You know, so it's important that we're able to, excuse me, look at those strengths and their struggles, and look really deeply into those things, and being able to share our insights with teachers, with counselors. And with those that are going to be able to also help them, and that we show that our children aren't just test scores or reports. That trusting our knowledge means that we're able to share our child's story. When parents unite, schools and systems listen. So one parent's voice is powerful, and just think of it. I've been at school board meetings when, I've seen a parent, very, very passionate, stand up and speak to the crowd, speak to the board, and you can hear the passion, you can hear the powerful, you know, like the intention behind their voice. And imagine, that's just one parent. Imagine a collection of multiple parents, putting their voices together. That can be unstoppable. So when parents, when families, when community, when they stand side by side, the schools and the systems, they'll open their ears. We'll be able to stand up and advocate for our children, where we can create, excuse me, changes where our children can thrive. So unity transforms our advocacy into action, and action can create a lasting change. Next slide, please. So if we look at, there's many challenges that we face, as we go into, the school system, and things aren't always easy. They can, especially the school system, it can feel so overwhelming, with all the forms and the rules and the school policies. And sometimes it really doesn't seem to make any sense. But when we can come together, we can help translate those things for each other. And so that confusion can turn into clarity. So when we come together, it kind of shows, and it feels like, you don't have to do this alone anymore, that you're able to step into this with each other, building that community, building that solidarity, and creating many great things with each other. Like I mentioned before, it can feel isolating, and we could feel unheard. So it's easy to feel like you're struggling alone. Um, but, when you're able to come together, you soon discover that you're not alone. We all have, been in our own spaces and our own journeys. And it's important to be able to share those times with each other and help each other wherever we can. And listen to those stories. Those stories add strength, and our voices will grow louder, than being alone. If we look at another challenge that we face is lack of resources. Sometimes it feels like we never have enough time. There's not enough support. But when we can create these resources with each other, in resources that didn't exist before, we can share what we know. We can also uncover new opportunities. And when you work in your communities, you can understand what they need. I know, like working in my community, I always look back to the very beginning of when I started my journey, and what kinds of things would have helped me. Even if it was a simple checklist, or somebody telling me a policy, or, learning how to even write a letter, or even like, how to go about certain things, even write a complaint, those types of things we can share with each other, and it makes a difference. Next slide. So our last session, we talked about learning how to advocate. And within that, we did talk about knowing your rights, to be able to advocate for, your child and yourself. We dropped a pocket guide, which we'll do again, into the chat. And this pocket guide, it goes over some main questions that, a lot of parents have, caregivers, about what to do when suspension happens. What are school policies? It talks about how long, and what kinds of things children could be suspended for, and what do we do when that happens. We also dropped an IEP toolkit for our disability rights. And so this toolkit covers a checklist on how to prepare for an IEP, how to request an IEP, goes over all the abbreviations, because there's some very confusing things. I know, like, there was a lot of stuff that I didn't understand when I was a parent. And so I just kind of looked into it, and I just thought to myself, how can we make this, the easiest that we can be to share with each other. We also covered documenting everything. our meetings, our emails, timelines, when we spoke to somebody, what did they say? Um, I have a story like for me, like even I always keep my children's homework, especially if they feel really great about it. And so I'll just tell you a quick story. I went to a conference for my daughter, and her teacher said, I see her doing her homework, but she never turns it in. And I was like, what? And I know my daughter's like been really like trying hard this year because she does have a 504. And so she's really pushed herself. And I had seen, she brought home all this homework and she was excited because they had good grades. And so luckily I had kept all this homework and I was able to send it back with her. And for some reason, and I don't know why, those grades were not input into her her grading book. So even things like, you may not feel like you need, I always keep everything, report cards. We are the ones, if we go in and we have something that we need to, talk about, if we are looking for an IEP or 504, even, conferences or anything like that, we have to prove what we are saying. So it's always best to have everything, that you can bring all your documentation. Um, Speaking up with confidence, knowing you're not alone. So with these, you guys are here tonight, attending trainings, workshops, going to different meetings, even, coming together as community members, all those things, they do, help you with learning how to advocate for your children. Next slide. All right. So let's look at things on how we can build together as a community. We'll say number one here, sharing our knowledge. Being able to tell your story. I know sometimes it's not comfortable, and it could be, upsetting. It can bring back bad memories and be traumatizing. But when you do get to that point when you feel comfortable, share your story. um, these help inspire others, just knowing like, wow, I thought I was alone in that situation, knowing that there's somebody else that either went or is going through that same thing. Offering helpful tools, ask with openness, celebrating wins, build guides together, and showing by example, like we talked about, going to trainings and going to workshops. And these are all different tools that we can use to help build together. Number two is creating safe spaces, um, protecting people's privacy. So we know that creating safe spaces, we need to have trust. So building that trust, having that respect, that once we have those things, we're able to be open. So, sometimes, if you're, starting a group or a parents group, or you're in a group, sometimes you do set certain agreements so that everybody agrees on, certain parameters that we have, like honoring confidentiality. That's huge. Again, if we're speaking about stories that are, close to us, we want to make sure that we feel very comfortable, and that, unless you're agreeing that your story can be shared, honor that person's confidentiality. They are trusting you with their story. Welcoming everybody's voice, especially without judgment. We're all in a different place. It's important to be able to feel like you have that support. So being able to listen with empathy and value their lived experiences. We always want to make sure that that you feel supported, understood, and able to share with each other, and honestly. Number three, supporting one another, parent to parent mentorship. So again, listening with care, sharing your journeys, guiding with kindness, celebrating growth. These are really important, because sometimes we may feel like we're not moving, we're not, going anywhere, but being able to celebrate somebody, their growth, this can push them and, help them, just gain that strength within themselves. Building resources together, learning how to advocate, having solutions, learning together, building advocacy skills. Again, being able to go to meetings and build those skills together. This is going to go a long way. This is, to use them to advocate and to be able to use them, with each other and for each other in our communities is really something special. Next slide. Okay. So building support systems. If we feel like we're alone, it's sometimes it's hard. We want to stay isolated and not get too involved, but you want to be involved. So being able to find people that support you, this all ties in from, going from me to we and building that community. So supporting each other, this means being present in big and small ways, encouraging each other, listening builds trust, showing up for each other, so they don't feel like they're alone, facing those challenges together, creating a circle of care so that they feel valued, emotional support, having that encouragement, listening, showing up for them. We have practical support, setting, giving reminders. I love reminders. There's so many times I'm like, please remind me. I will forget. I have a million things to do. I'm not going to be offended. Please. I love it. And having that support, sometimes ride together, carpooling, just bringing those resources together, sharing all of that with each other. This like really helps shape a support system. And it has like all these lasting relationships to build with each other, helping each other, take accountability, having, that follow through. This, believe me, this can get hard. Our lives are busy, work and children, and add on, school stuff and, all this stuff. And having that support system is huge. Like I said, offering those reminders, celebrating those small steps, just all of these things can make it easier for all of us to stay committed and support each other and help build each other's goals. Again, we want to build that solidarity. To me, that's a huge word, and it's important, and it's inspirational. I want to send it over to Erica. She's going to go through her case studies. I'll give it to Erica.
Thank you, Mary. I love the word too. Thank you. That was the wonderful building solidarity. And now I'm going to be sharing some examples on how parents working together and creating those safe spaces and working together and making their voices heard. I'm going to share just a few examples of those here in the Valley. So, as Mary shared in the previous slides, like the me to we, right? How these isolated cases that I feel I'm the only parent experiencing this issue with my kid can transform into powerful changes of the systems that often punish our students, right? So here I'm going to be sharing, and you can see in this slide multiple pictures, pretty pictures of community residents, parents from here in the Valley. I'm going to be sharing 3 examples of parents in Kern, in Fresno, and Tulare County, and how they collaborative efforts have been able to bring change to their to their system and how their students and their kids experience education, right? So the next slide, please. Here, I know this is a little kind of crowded. We were trying to put everything together, and we will be sharing a lot more in detail at our next session when we talk about our stories to action. But I just wanted to provide a little kind of like overview of Kern County and the Kern Education Justice Collaborative case, and how parents came together and were able to successfully advocate for change in their communities. So here in the timeline, you can see here in 2010, the Department of Education, the Office of Civil Rights, revealed that Kern County had one of the highest suspension and expulsion rates in the state of California. So the suspension in the state, and over a period of time between like 2009 and 2010, Kern schools expel over 2,200 students, even though the total population of the districts made just 3% of the state students. They represented 14% of the total students suspended during that year. So this was huge. These were not just numbers in a data sheet. These were the stories of students who were experiencing zero tolerance policies. And the story of this particular region it's sad, right? So many years of tough on crime mentality, zero tolerance in school discipline. And we were hearing those stories. So community advocates and parents were sharing those stories. And with the help, like Mary was just sharing, we build on power by supporting each other and creating and having support systems. So in 2011 and 2012, parents and community advocates that were hearing these stories went and asked for help. Hey, what can we do? And Cadre, an organization in LA that used a human rights approach to end the school to prison pipeline, came and provided guidance to community advocates and parents in Kern. And through that guidance, they created the Kern Education Justice Collaborative. That was the group that led the effort in pushing back to school districts. So during that time, we were hearing stories about how students, like the case of Carmen, and I'm just going to kind of briefly talk about here. Carmen was a student in Irving High School. So Irving High School is located in one of the outskirts of Bakersfield, and she was suspended from school and was transferred to a continuation school 30 miles away from her home. Her dad signed the papers, received the papers, signed the papers, and the papers were not translated in Spanish. So when the father or the parents signed these papers, he didn't know that he was given consent to the transfer of of his child to this continuation school that was 30 miles away. So minor infractions, like another student was suspended for talking back to the teacher. This particular student was suffering from trauma in his home, and the mom actually came to the district and requested support for his student. He needed help, but instead of doing that, the district suspended him for minor infraction, and no kind of support was provided for him. Or the case of another student in another rural community in Kern as well, who was assaulted outside of the school, and the district provided no protection for that student, but instead of providing protection, they suspended the student and labeled him as a gang member. So these are just a few of the cases that we were hearing in community, and parents sharing, like Mary said, in these safe circles or listening circles, sharing their story and finding out that they were not alone. These were not isolated cases that were happening just to one particular family. This was a system problem. So throughout this time, parents were coming together, learning about their rights, like Mary shared at the beginning, learning how to advocate, and more importantly, learning about their voice and that their voice matters, and sharing their personal stories, even though they were hard to share. And because sometimes parents feel, oh, no, I am embarrassed. I don't want to share. This is happening. Being able to come across and find the space, the safe space to share their story is important, and learning about the rights and how to advocate. So there in the picture on the bottom, you can see parents participating in listening sessions, sharing their stories, learning about their rights. And this, again, is a long, kind of like a long timeline. We know that change doesn't happen overnight, right? So we need to stay consistent, and more importantly, we need to stay present and constantly pushing. So the parents during this time, from, remember, we have the 2010 data that show, yes, the students, that parents came together and they went multiple times to the district asking, hey, we need change. We need our students to be treated different. We don't want more zero tolerance policies. And I don't know if some of you remember, during that time in 2013, the state of California adopted the local control funding formula, which requires school districts to have parental engagement in how they spend and in how they create their local control accountability plan. So this was a great opportunity for parents to utilize state law to advocate for change. So parents were advocating for the instauration of restorative justice practices and positive behavior intervention and support. So the case for Kern County at the 2010, so Latino students represented 55% of the student enrollment, but 60% of the students expulsions in that district. African American students, 8% of the student enrollment, but 15% of the student expulsions. So that disparity was clear. Students of colors were clearly being denied an education and instead being suspended. So as parents working multiple times, coming to board meetings and advocating for these changes, and the district saying, no, we're not going to do anything. So parents didn't have any other option that have to come together and with other community-based organizations and legal aid providers and file a lawsuit. The lawsuit against Kern High School District alleges systematic discrimination and racially hostile education environment. So the lawsuit refers as a systemic discrimination and allege that the district was creating a racially hostile education environment for students. Again, the lawsuit was filed. Parents kept pushing, kept coming. The LCAP process is every year that the district has to revise. So that didn't mean that the parents filed the lawsuit and they didn't go away. They keep working together and coming together. And after 2 years of pressure, they were able to divert investment. So, and one thing that I was forgetting to mention. So Kern High School District has their own police department. Is one of the few school districts in the state of California that have their own. It's not part of the regular PD from the city. They have their own police department with their own budget. So parents were able to divert $2.5 million away from law enforcement and towards the school climate. And also they were able to advocate for $1.1 million in LCAP funding to be designated for parental engagement. So after many years of pushing back and multiple parents coming to school board meetings and talking, the district settled. They said, okay, yeah, we recognize we made a mistake. We have been using zero tolerant policies, and we are able to commit now to adopt new discipline reforms, focus on keeping students in school instead of pushing them out. So we will be sharing in the chat. There is the whole report on this particular case. If you are curious and want to learn more, there is a lot more that went into place in the timeline, but for the matter of time, I just wanted to share that. Next slide, please. This is the case for Fresno County. So where parents, again, using LCAP. LCAP is a wonderful tool that parents can use to advocate for change in their schools. So they came together and engaged in the local control accountability plan process and influenced the district's decision in funding programs for English language learners. Their advocacy effort helped preserve dual immersion programs in the two schools that is mentioned there. So what was the impact of the parents coming together? Increased bilingual staff support, more equitable allocation of LCFF funding for English language learners, and strengthen the dual language programs across the district. Next slide, please. And when we talk about from me to we can leave behind students' voices. Students' voices are important. They're the ones in school, they're the one experiencing racial policies. They're the one who are at the front of the issues, right? So here I wanted to share the case from 2022 from the Black Student Union members from Buller and Edison High in Fresno. So they went to the board meeting and demand action against racism and safer school environments. This happened after a tragic nationwide incident that happened in New York, Buffalo. I don't know if some of you remember, but the students protested. They organized a protest, and the person who organized the protest was being bullied right after organizing that protest. So following that protest, this student was being bullied in social media, and these students transformed that hurt into action, into that pain, into advocacy, and went and participated. And you can see there in the picture when they went to the board and courageously shared their experience. It wasn't easy to share, right? We know, especially if you're in high school, sometimes talking about in public can be challenging when you come to the board, but that didn't stop them, and they came and advocate. And thanks to that action that they took together, again, one student was experiencing this situation, and they all came together and advocated. So thanks to their leadership, this inspired the district-wide change in Fresno Unified expanded its race and social justice student advisory board to every high school, ensuring that students have a space to enforce anti-racist policies. So this movement shows how students' voices can drive lasting systemic change towards equity and justice. Next slide, please. This is just another case, and again, we'll talk more, and we'll have more time to talk about these cases, about how the story comes into action. And this is about parents in Tulare County, again, using the LCAP as a tool to advocate for changes. Parents leaders in Tulare County, they work together with the school district to advocate for restorative justice practices, and they help shape the district policies into more positive instead of punitive discipline. Through their engagement, they were able to advocate for the implementation of positive behavior intervention and support, and emotional support in the schools. Here, I was like, oh, this is interesting. So parents were able to do this, and you can see their award. I don't know if you're able to see the schools, but each seal at the bottom of the slide here it's an award that they got this year for the implementation of positive behavior and support in the different schools in Tulare. So how do these positive, and I just wanted to share here, like, what do those restorative justice programs look like a student success and intervention plan, where coaches mentor students who are at high risk or impacted by gang involvement, providing academic and behavioral support, and they use restorative justice practices to guide students through conflict resolution. Or Thrive Hard, which is another program that they have as part of PBIS, and it's a proactive framework that focuses on explicitly teaching and reinforcing behavioral expectations. We expect the best from our students, or conflict resolution through counseling. So next slide, please. I don't know if I have that one. So these are just samples of when parents come together, what they're able to accomplish. So we wanted to inspire parents here in this group to see what are the actions that you would like to take. The fact that you're here at 6 on a Tuesday means that you are a leader, that you want to be part of the movement. So we wanted to know if, and again, we still have a little bit of time. So if you're able or to come off mute or put in the chat, what are you here tonight? What is something that inspire you to create change? What is your story? What is something that you would like to change in your community? So we wanted to provide a little bit of space to see if anybody is. You can put it in the chat if you're shy and don't want to share. You're off mute.
Our next series will also be covering and talking about our stories and how we can put those things into action. So if you need time and you want to talk or, think about it, what your why is and what brought you here today or even into this space, and maybe you can share it next time and we'll talk more about it. We'll have a little bit more time to be able to kind of dive into that and how you can take that story and use that and put it into action in your community.
Next slide. Will be if you have any questions, like Mary said, strong people, and we like this quote from Ella Baker. Strong people don't need strong leaders. Strong people come together. The next slide. Okay. If you have any questions, you can share it in the chat. We have. I don't know if we have any questions in the chat. Next slide then. Again, this is and another reminder again of our upcoming event. So if you are in Fresno, please come join us tomorrow at the Fresno City College for the field screening of Preschool to Prison, which we just find out it won an Emmy. So is an Emmy award documentary. We'll be happy playing that one tomorrow in collaboration with Fresno City College, followed by a panel discussion. And then we have our next series is going to be next Tuesday at the same time, here with the same link and or billboard. So if you are in Stockton or Bakersfield or Fresno, please take a picture with the beautiful banner. Can be a selfie and tag us on social media, showing that yes, parents coming together, united, we care for our kids. We're not going to let this punitive system keep utilizing our kids and sending them through the wrong path. That's why we're doing this, and you're here tonight participating in this training. So I don't know if anybody has any questions. Other than that, I think we ended up earlier, and we'll give you some extra time to go back to your family. We appreciate you coming tonight and spending this time with us.
Yes. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. We look forward to seeing you at our next session next Tuesday.